Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. So I just wanted to do a follow-up to the video I made yesterday, just to quickly address what Jeremy Clarkson has said in response to his comments, and then I'm going to get onto the actual topic of this video. So basically, Jeremy Clarkson tweeted a completely rubbish non-apology yesterday. He wrote, "Oh dear, I've rather put my foot in it. In a column I wrote about Meghan, I made a clumsy reference to a scene in Game of Thrones, and this has gone down badly with many people. I am horrified to have caused so much hurt, and I shall be more careful in future." There's absolutely no ownership here of the harm he's caused. There's no apology to Meghan personally. And also, I just want to get into the Game of Thrones reference, because I'm someone who literally reviews Game of Thrones. I'm doing a House of the Dragon review series at the moment. Like, I love it. It's like an obsession of mine. I love that series. And I just want to really briefly say why that doesn't actually make sense. You know, I'm seeing people saying, oh, it's a reference to something that happened in fiction, so it's okay. No, the reference is still, there is a scene in Game of Thrones where a woman goes through trauma. So it's like sexual violence and public shame. She is made to, this once powerful woman is made to walk naked, like, through the streets of the town. People throw things at her and her feet are bloody and she's crying and she's traumatized. And to any normal viewer, even though you don't necessarily like her character, you feel pity for her because no one should have to go through that. And it's this horrible feeling of, that even though, I mean, she's a villain character, Cersei's a villain, but the idea is that even she can't cheat the system because she's still a woman. So she's still being made to parade the streets. She was once the most powerful woman there, and because she's a woman, she's being made to parade naked, and people are leering at her in a sexual manner while she's sobbing and crying. And it's really traumatic to see. You know, I don't think a normal viewer looks at that and first of all thinks, I want that to happen to anyone. But second of all, you know, it's not written as some sort of good moment. You know, it's not, oh great, justice has been served. At the end of this walk, she is sobbing and she is scooped up like a child, and she is naked and she is bloody and she's covered in all sorts of horrible things, and it really makes you feel pity for her. So first of all, that's the scene in context. So second of all, people are saying that, you know, him referencing that makes it any better, but why does it? Why does referencing, saying you want something that's happened to a fictional character which is traumatic to happen to a real person, why does that take away the damage? It doesn't make sense. Imagine if I were to, and I'm not going to, but imagine if I were to really vividly talk about what happened to Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, right? I won't get into it if you're not a Game of Thrones watcher, but imagine if I really graphically spoke about what happened to him and then said I wanted that to happen to Jeremy Clarkson in an article where I was clearly having a great time, and I also compared him to a serial killer. Also, I just want to say as well, Jeremy Clarkson has tweeted in the past about Meghan's death. So this is something he fixates on. You know, he has... Let me find it. Right, this is also in The Sun. But she should know this. When she dies, hopefully many years from now, she will not be carried in front of millions by stoic men with good hearts and strong arms. If it's a slow news day, the best she'll get is a small obituary in The Times on page 27. Because our whole being is based on nothing at all, and we prefer people with a bit more stuff going on. So this is something he's already thought about. He's already thought about not only her death, but also the shame and humiliation in her death. You know, no one will care for her. No one cares. Once she's dead, I'll be happy. You know, it doesn't make sense. Saying it's a Game of Thrones reference doesn't change it. It's a traumatic event that happens to a female character. It's sexual violence. It's physical violence. It's a horrifying scene. That doesn't make it better. How does that make it better? I don't understand how people are saying, oh, get with it, Snowflake, it's a Game of Thrones scene. Right, imagine if I, like, referenced a scene in something where someone's graphically killed and then said, oh, I'd love for that to happen to your mother. Are you going to be sitting there laughing and going, I need to just get a grip because that's just a reference to something. It's an incitement saying you want that to happen to someone. It's saying you think that person deserves that and doing so publicly. I've also seen people saying it's a parody. Friends, I have my master's now, and I did my degree in English literature and creative writing. My master's is in creative writing. I know what parody is. Parody is a deliberate exaggeration for comic effect. So I'm asking you where the comic effect is. Right? Where's the comic effect in that, in wishing that on a human being, on a real woman, who's also, as we know, receiving threats? We now know from the security services that there were very real threats to her life. Where's the comedy? I must be missing it. Maybe I don't have a sense of humour, but I don't see where the joke is. Where's the joke? Maybe you could explain. There are also people saying that, oh, you know, it's just words. Words don't have meaning. Like, do you live in the world? Like, words do have meaning. That's why they exist. I don't know. Some of these excuses have been absolutely ridiculous, and I worry about these people, like, trying to make excuses for it, because even people who don't like Meghan, which is fine, I've seen people who don't like Meghan condemning Jeremy Clarkson, what he wrote. It shouldn't be hard for a normal, decent human being to think that's disgusting, no matter what you think of the target. I worry about all those people. A lot of people are outing themselves as some very vile, horrible people who have some real sex offendery thoughts going on, is all I'll say. Oh, and one more thing I just wanted to say on this rough topic is I've seen people talking about how there've been all these polls and that the British public don't like Meghan and Harry, which is rubbish. It doesn't make sense. These polls are from The Sun. I've seen the Sun saying this and I've seen the Mail saying this, and their headline is like, oh, so-and-so percentage of people don't like them, and then you realise it's a percentage of their readers, right? And of course their readers, first of all, I try to be empathetic, but, you know, readers of The Sun aren't necessarily going to be very nice people. Let's just put it that way. But also, if we are more empathetic, we're also seeing a smear campaign of misinformation being put constantly through these tabloids because it runs the tabloids. And I do think, you know, we know that the people in charge of the tabloids have disdain for their own readers a lot of the time. You know, it's just, you know, I can stir up anger and make people hate, and it makes me more money because they buy my stuff. That doesn't prove anything. Like, obviously, if you've been running a smear campaign in your hate rag for all this time and then your readers believe it, it's like, what's that supposed to mean? What's that supposed to tell us? But let's talk about women, because in my last video I spoke about obviously Jeremy Clarkson and Piers Morgan, and I was speaking about the creepy old men that seem to do this. It's younger men as well. There's a lot of misogyny involved here. There's controlling a woman, desiring her, feeling she's not, like, grateful enough. You need to, like, possess her, like she should be in awe of you. There's definitely something to be said as well in the way that these men perceive Meghan Markle and Kate Middleton, because they seem to think, oh, Kate Middleton's like this shy, retiring, she has no opinion, she looks so beautiful, she doesn't really say anything, and that's why we admire her. That worries me. Why is that why you admire her? I'm not saying, you know, I don't know her as a person. She might have wonderful personal qualities. But if that's why you admire her, then I'm starting to wonder why you as a man... Why is that? But okay, let's go for women, and let's go for older women. And we need to talk about the fact that there are a lot of older white women, some younger white women, but mostly older white women who really, really despise Meghan. And I wanted to get into that because it's a mixture of internalized misogyny, but then there's also, like, heavy racism. There's extreme racism. And you notice that a lot of these people really, like, idealize, they're kind of more right-wing, like, they call themselves, like, royal correspondents or royal experts, or they're really into it. But it's really because they have this proximity to power, and I believe it, like, bolsters them in this, like, modern world where we're becoming more diverse. I think it's this one safe space where these older, bitter white women can just sit there and be like, but we're still in charge. We're still in charge here, and we can still punish you, and we're still important. Like, it's an ego thing. These things are always projection. It's always an ego thing. It's about hierarchy and maintaining hierarchy, which in some ways is ridiculous because it works against them, because working within misogyny is going to backfire on you, as they know. But some of these people are willfully doing it because they also know that being white women and being women who go along with it, it gets them a little bit of fleeting power. Right? I'm sure it feels good. It might get them some gigs, you know, doing interviews and being horrible. But also that with a lot of these people, and this person that I want to talk about particularly, it is in fact their proximity to royalty and their whiteness that really is why they have a name for themselves, right? There's not really a skill. There's not really an art. Like, there's not really anything to their name that they have for themselves. It's just the proximity to that, right? It's how much they fawn over that, and it raises their own status in their mind because they're close to greatness, because they don't possess greatness themselves. And this is where I'm going to get into. So there is a woman who I didn't really know much about her. Like, I've seen her on things, but I didn't really know who she was. I've seen her on and off online. So let's focus on one example here, and I'll try and tell you what I mean here. So Angela Levin. She's Camilla's biographer. So as far as I understand it, she's had communication with Camilla. I believe she was asked to meet with her. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've seen online. But it does seem very odd. It seems like a sort of this sort of brand of person seems to actually exist as a sort of stan, like a sort of fan thing. It's like a real fandom around royal figures, which obviously is odd because it's not for what they do. It's just for them really being born or being married in. You know, it's really quite, I find it personally very odd. You know, when I have an interest in, like, the Tudors, and I have an interest in Anne Boleyn, for example, and all of Henry VIII's wives and other women of that time, I'm interested in the situations that they were in, the political stage and what it meant to be a woman with some degree of power, and how most of them were destroyed, right? And especially how our history looks back on them. I'm very, very interested in how we tell our histories and whose perspectives we privilege in those histories, because I think that helps us moving forward. So we have this very strange woman who I keep seeing. I did a little bit of research before this, and I keep seeing her on GB News, which GB News is if it wasn't harmful, it would be laughable. I turned it on the other day. Mum and I were flicking through channels. They were actually having a debate about trans people, and the presenter was just openly saying trans women are men, and I have a right to say that because that's the truth. Like, it's just a hate channel. It's not really a news channel. Like, it's ridiculous, and it's really harmful, and they kind of run like the tabloids on hate clicks. It's kind of funny because they accuse the left of being snowflakes, but all they ever talk about is woke culture, Harry and Meghan, and trans people. And occasionally asylum seekers coming over on dinghies, of course. Got to vilify them. You got to, complete the bingo card. So everything you would imagine you'd find on GB News, you find on GB News. So I saw this woman on there, and she was talking about Meghan and Harry, right? So this is the most recent one I saw. She was being interviewed about it. And I was interested because I was thinking, well, what qualifies her to be on here? So she calls herself I think she calls herself a royal expert or something. But what does that actually mean, a royal expert? Because to me, it just looks like she's someone who likes hierarchy. She seems to be really she loves Camilla for some reason. But what's the... I don't understand what the credentials are. I mean, Harry talks about this in his documentary, and I think this is why so many of these royal experts are so angry, because he's pointed out that they actually don't know anything. They don't really know anything about what's going on. They're just part of the PR routine, and in some ways they're so embarrassing. And I imagine the royal family themselves, obviously they're quite useful to the royal family, but I can also imagine in private the royal family probably think, oh God, how embarrassing these people are. Can you believe that they're living their lives like this about us? Like, they must laugh in private. I would. And I saw a review of her biography of Camilla, actually, in The Observer, which called it sycophantic, out of date, and barely researched. Doesn't surprise me, having watched some of these interviews. So I thought, what qualifies her first of all to be on there? Because she comes across as quite a bitter older woman with a lot of hate in her heart. She was almost reminding me not to link this to J.K. Rowling. I'm not into. I actually did enjoy the Harry Potter stories. I can't lie, I grew up on it, but I can't support her now. But it's given me very Umbridge vibes. It's that sort of. I don't know how to describe the vibe, but she's getting pleasure out of the hatred, right? It's smiling while she says these nasty things. And it's interesting to observe psychologically. I was sitting there watching this. I wasn't really angry because I know people like this exist. And I was just trying to figure her out. I was trying to figure these people out. Like, what are they getting out of it? Why? So she just goes on there and she says things that are of no substance at all, which are just things like, oh, they're ludicrous, they're ridiculous, they're phony. And it offers nothing to the discussion. It offers nothing to anyone, really. And she's on there like she's breaking a story or something. The journalism. This is not journalism, is it? It's ridiculous. It's a hateful woman who has a complex, who has an obsession with hating on this couple and this much younger couple. Does anyone else find that weird? Like, the generational gap is even weirder, because why does an old woman spend her time trying to do down this younger woman and her partner? Why is that? Does that strike anyone else as just completely weird? It's really creepy, isn't it? This woman's also, she was a feature writer for the Daily Mail. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I just found some of her, so her interviews where she kind of goes on there and she just says, oh yeah, they're phony and they're fake. And she doesn't actually have anything, she doesn't have anything to offer because she doesn't know anything. She's like, oh, I'm Camilla's biographer. And I'm sure, yeah, she's met Camilla, but she doesn't have any further information. It's a case of, without being obsessed with Meghan or without simping over Camilla, what does she have? Because she wouldn't really be, what would she be without that? That's her skill gone. So in some ways, I suppose I understand that she's fighting for her relevancy and her income. I mean, I suppose. And I didn't know about this woman. I mean, I'd kind of heard her name. I think I've seen her tweets before, and I just thought, what a bitter, horrible person. I didn't realise that it's almost funny. So she made this tweet earlier saying, cautionary tale: if you leave your family, job and country, take a while to learn from others, be modest, tread carefully, and don't assume you know best. Remember, others can be much more powerful than you. Right, but she's revealing herself, right? Because she's talking about, so be modest, don't be an upstart, don't overshine people who are above you, you're below them on the status hierarchy and you should know that. You know, she's threatening them. Remember, others can be much more powerful than you. So what are you saying, Angela? You're saying that that's all right, is it? So don't upset people if they've got more power than you. Is that obviously that is how her mind works. I was going to say, is that how your mind works? Of course it is. She's dedicated so much time to simping over Camilla because it brings her some sort of, you know, she can almost attach herself to those achievements and make her feel like she's something when she is an old white woman who's full of bitterness and probably isn't very satisfied in her personal life. Because why would you fixate on this so much? You know, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense as to why you would if you've got your own life and family and you're this, like, why would you do it? Right, be modest, tread carefully, and don't assume you know best. Right, so, and also it's making me think, like, this is probably what Diana went through, isn't it? Essentially, with Camilla as well, and that whole system. It's know your place. That's essentially her worldview, is know your place. I don't understand why these people are so willing to accept that their place on this world is, I'm lesser than the royals because the royals were born different. They were born to rule me and I'm subservient. Is that not embarrassing? I find that embarrassing. Like, why? But also it's bizarre because by that logic, well, Meghan's married to the prince, right? So shouldn't you know your place, Angela? Isn't that what you're saying? You're saying remember others can be more powerful than you. Know your place, tread carefully. Right? Cautionary tale as well. Like, it's a threat. It's like this veiled threat. It's like, oh, don't rock the boat. You know, oh, don't try and get above yourselves. And you can't deny the racial overtones here from an old white woman desperately trying to lecture this woman of colour, right? This mixed woman. And I know Meghan's white passing, but so much of the media coverage has been pushing that she's mixed and she's got exotic DNA and she's different, and they're really using that. There's a kick they get out of it. You can feel it, the spiteful kick they get out of saying, you know, you're only here because we allow you to be here. Be grateful. Be grateful. You're different from us, you woman of colour. You're so different and you're mouthy. You have the nerve to be different from us and not to grovel at our feet. That's it, essentially. Right, that's it. It's quite hilarious, actually. I went on her Twitter and she calls herself a journalist and a royal commentator. We can all be royal commentators. What does that mean? What does that even mean? Okay, so, and then she's dedicated all this time. And she's an older woman, right? And she says she's a journalist. She's all these things. But her account just reads like any old troll account, right? So it's just constant retweets about, oh, Duchess of Sussex is lying because the Toronto's chief of police has said that she wasn't left unprotected. See? Right, she's retweeted this random account. Listen to how ridiculous this is. It doesn't make sense. Meghan Markle once claimed she doesn't pay attention to tabloids and they are just noise. She also claims she doesn't read social media. However, the entire Netflix disaster was about her feeling threatened about comments made about her on social media. Pick a struggle, and then there's a picture saying liar, liar. What are these people on? I'm sorry. What she said makes perfect sense, right? So, she doesn't pay attention to tabloids. Neither do I try not to. It's harder with social media. And it's just noise. Sure, she's not reading the tabloids. How... She's saying, oh, she felt threatened. Yes, you would feel threatened, wouldn't you? If there's people on social media making threats about you, if the media are all in on it. This is a nasty victim blamer, right? And I really, it makes me question, maybe Camilla's shot herself in the foot. Because this is your biographer. And this is going on, right? This woman is a bully. This woman is, I believe, a racist. She's certainly got internalized sexism, and she spends her time desperately trying to make people hate on Meghan Markle. And what for? Why? Like, what? It's an obsession with these people. It's like transphobia, you know? It becomes like an obsession for bored people. People who are bored, and often, I think, white women who feel like the world is changing and, oh, we need to listen to other perspectives, and, oh, there's different beauty standards coming in and we feel insecure about that, so we have to put other people down. We have to find somewhere to stamp our authority. We have to find someone lesser to bully, right? That's what it is. You've also got her then retweeting that Harry, Prince, Duke, the son of the king and head of state, is now being effectively corrected by the Prime Minister. This is shifting imperceptibly from a family row to the political, the diplomatic and constitutional. Good, the trouble they cause needs to be seen in these terms. And the tweet is, I absolutely don't believe that Britain is a racist country, and I'd hope that as our nation's first British Asian Prime Minister, when I say that, it carries some weight. Right, Rishi Sunak is not... Rishi Sunak is a Tory, right? He's in charge of a party which is disgustingly... Like, it's got a lot of disgusting racism, right? There's huge anti-immigrant rhetoric, okay? This is identity politics the right are just casually engaging in. Like, actually, racism's not... Look, racism's not a thing because this brown man said it isn't. And then they accuse the left of appealing to identity politics. What have they just done here? Like, it's exactly what they're doing. And I think to deny that there's racism in this country is ridiculous. And also, might I say that Rishi Sunak wasn't elected. He wasn't actually elected by people. Let's just remember that. Anyone who says there's not racism in this country is delusional or racist. Like, open your eyes. Like, there's not much of an excuse now. Right, she's also retweeted... It's just a hate thing, right? And I think a lot of these older white women don't think of themselves as traditional trolls, right? They think because of their whiteness, because of their poshness, because of, like, the sort of people they are around, that it comes across differently. It doesn't. It's the same. It's just dedicating your life to bitterness, right? And it's eating you up. I mean, look at this. Been saying this since it happened, yet she's on Netflix crying about, are her children safe? You tacky, classless money grubber need to shut up. Is what Angela Levin retweeted. You tacky, classless money grubber. What's wrong with these people? And I think they've been enabled, right? Because they get asked because of outrage sales. But do you think they actually have the capacity to sit down and just wonder where their life went wrong? Do you think they just sit there and think, wow, I just did another engagement where I offer nothing of value and I speak about how much I hate a person I don't actually know? A young woman who's being harassed and feels suicidal and lost a child. A young woman who's being harassed and feels suicidal and lost a child. And that's what I'm doing with my life. And they know to come to me because they know I'll do it. At what point do these people start thinking they've gone wrong? Or do they not have the capacity to realise they've gone wrong? Because it's not normal, is it? Too many of these people, it's like Jeremy Clarkson. They've got away with it for so long they think it's normal. Has anyone in their life ever turned around to them and just said, that's really weird? Why are you doing that? Like, what are you getting out of it? Why don't you live your life? Why don't you do something that you enjoy? And I think sadly in a lot of cases, because a lot of these people don't have talent of their own, like they can only piggyback off other people. That's why they're attached to the royals. They're attached to hierarchy and meaning because it gives them meaning in hierarchy. It makes them feel closer to it. Unfortunately. And that's probably unkind to say, but I do believe that's the psychology of it. We've also got from her, H&M are angry, quotation marks. There is no contact from the palace and demand an apology, in brackets, for what? Little is worse than filming secretly for 3 years to tell the world what they think of our monarchy, and yet not even a ripple back. It sure puts you in your place. It sure puts you in your place. What place is that? What place would that be, Angela? Do you want to explain? What does that mean? Why don't you explain to the British people what you mean by being put in your place? Because let's actually delve into what these people believe and what they're saying. What does that mean to be put in your place? What's their place? What's your place? What's my place? What is the place of a woman of colour here? Because we need to actually get into what these people believe. Little is worse than filming secretly for 3 years to tell the world what they think of our monarchy, which again isn't actually what happened. But there's plenty worse. There's plenty worse than secretly filming over 3 years. I mean, I'd say it's probably worse to be a woman of that age. At this point in your life, you would assume that you'd have achieved some sort of, I don't know, some sort of personal happiness, or, you know, you'd find your skill, or you'd be helping people out there and finding where you were in the world, and you wouldn't be doing this. It's so childish and immature, you'd expect it from children, but these grown adults are doing it. And I'm sure it's because there's sadness in them, and there's emptiness in them, and there's jealousy, there's a lot of anger. I think deep down they have low self-esteem themselves, which is why they link themselves to it so much. They don't really have much confidence in themselves and what they have to give. And it is a shame because, you know, I'm sure if she put her mind to other things in life, she could have been really successful in them. But she's choosing, and she has to live with that. And I think that's why these people double down. They're choosing to, at their ages, still hate on this young woman and her partner. You know, when she was on GB News, there was one thing where she's talking about Harry and Meghan. She's been asked on. She doesn't know anything about what's gone on. She's literally just there to say, oh yeah, she's a fake phony actress. No one says, why do you think that, Angela? What do you know? You know, come on, what are you bringing to the table? You know, I could have got that from any internet troll. Come on, at least give something if you're going to be here. But, like, you know, and the presenter says something like, you know, I just wish there'd be a total media blackout on Meghan and Harry. And she's like, oh yeah, same. You don't believe that. That's how you're making your money, from hating on this young woman. That's how you're making your money. You love it. It's all you do. Imagine dedicating your life to being a simp for this institution and being someone who says, oh, know your place, you should, you know, respect your betters. Then surely understand, if that's your worldview, that in your mind, aren't you lesser than Meghan? Aren't you lesser than Harry? Shouldn't you know your place? Sorry, Harry's the son of a king. Shouldn't you know your place? Like, by that logic, you've cancelled yourself out. You've also got her just randomly tweeting things like, Meghan puts on an act and you can't believe a word she says. Based on what? Does no one ever turn around to put women like this and just say, why do you think that? Like, what's that about? You know? There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Says it all that she always tried to bring down Her Majesty to be a sweet old granny. Of course M knew what she was doing. Right. And they're angry that Meghan has apparently consistently and insidiously always referred to the Queen as Harry's grandmother. And that it's a strategy, right, to put herself above her. But no, it's not. If you're not somebody who necessarily believes in the monarchy, or you're somebody who's gone into it and you're starting to think, actually, I'm not sure I agree with the hierarchy here, but I believe in the work. If that seems to be what Meghan's position is, although it seems that she and Harry are kind of growing away from that the more that's gone on and the more that's been exposed. But if that's, why is that the Queen is her grandmother? The Queen is Harry's grandmother, and by extension, she's like a grandmother figure to Meghan. You know, they talk about, oh, Meghan's so jealous. She's so jealous. She's trying to bring down the Queen. They're jealous. They're jealous because they want to be close to the Queen. And to be completely honest, let's be honest, what do you reckon Elizabeth actually would think of these people? She'd probably think, oh my God, why are they so obsessed with us? Why are these people dedicating their lives to this? Like, do they not have something to do? What's, it's probably a bit weird, isn't it? It's like when Charles was seen on camera when they were younger, and the journalists were taking pictures of William and Harry and Charles, and you hear Charles say something like, oh God, no, like, here they are. Like, because, yeah, they are human beings. I know people who believe in the monarchy have to try and go with the whole divine right of kings, and that they're like these divine beings that are better than everyone else. But they're not. They are people. There's nothing insidious about Meghan referring to the fact that the Queen is Harry's grandmother. That's the truth, because they don't want to think about the fact that if Elizabeth is just a woman, then the monarchy is a lie, because we have just placed a woman who isn't destined by birth by anything in particular. She's not destined to rule. She was just born into a family, and she's a normal woman. Like, or just she could be anyone. She's just a random woman who's in this situation, and in some ways she's the head of an institution which has done a lot of harm. In other ways she's probably a victim because she's been made a mascot of this whole system, right? They can't think about that. They just can't think about it because it destroys everything they think about. Why is it wrong for Meghan to be referring to her as a sweet old granny? I thought, isn't that what the PR has been trying to do for ages? When the Queen died, weren't people saying, oh, she's like the nation's grandmother? Everything Meghan does, right, if she does the same thing as these nasty people, right, so they'll be like, oh, the Queen, our wonderful Queen, the nation's grandmother. And then she does it, and suddenly it's insidious and dangerous because she's a mixed-race woman that's, she's risen above her station. How dare she speak out? It's just so weird that it's these older white women doing this. Like, I get a life. Like, do something. What are you doing? What are they doing with their lives? What's the point? And also I found out when I was looking into this woman that apparently she knew about Jimmy Savile, right? So apparently she was on a Louis III documentary. I've seen the clip. I can't put it here because of copyright. She knew about Savile, right? So she'd been warned by a nurse about what was going on, and she didn't pass it on to anyone. She didn't pass that on to anyone. And then when Louis III, kind of spoke to her about it, not in a kind of accusatory way, but kind of said, what can we kind of learn from that? And she said something like, oh, we mustn't be blinded by fame or something. And he said, but what else, what can we learn? And she just didn't want to learn from it. It's so funny that her whole life is blinded by fame, right? She exists to serve a hierarchy which ultimately thinks she's nothing. That's the sad truth with a lot of these royal correspondents. And again, I would feel bad for them if they weren't inflicting harm on these real human beings, because there is something really sad about it. Of course there is. There's an interview where she's complaining on GB News. This is just from a quick Google or a quick YouTube I did earlier. And she's then complaining about the photos in the documentary. She says, I don't want to see all of her kisses and things. It's completely inappropriate to do that. What? It does make me sad for these people, because there's nothing explicit in the documentary. They are normal pictures of a couple hugging, and there's one where they're kind of kissing. It's not explicit. It's just a little peck on the, like a little peck in the kitchen. It's a really nice shot. What loveless lives these people must live to find that inappropriate. Why is that inappropriate? There was nothing inappropriate in it. That's just a couple that are in love, right? And I think they're shocked because they've now realised, wait, this couple actually are in love. And now they've got to be like, oh, actually, it was inappropriate. It was X-rated. They'll say anything. She even describes that she felt sick. She felt sick watching the trailer. It made her feel sick. Yes, it did, because she's projecting. It's making her feel sick with jealousy. It's quite complex, but it's a jealousy feeling, isn't it? It's a spite. It's very childish. You know, she also claims that, you know, she makes this weird claim from about 2 weeks ago that Harry and Meghan's beef is that, in fact, they are jealous of Kate because she says, you know, Kate's so beautiful and stylish and Meghan can't quite pull it off. Now, first of all, why would... That doesn't make sense. Why would... Obviously, Harry's attracted to his wife that he married. Why would Kate's fashion sense be of any import to Harry whatsoever? Right, second of all, it's quite obvious that, like, just... I feel weird for even getting into this. Meghan and Kate are both very, you know, traditionally beautiful women. They're both, you know, they look very nice. They're very aesthetically pleasing. They both have very different personal styles. Now we're getting into this weird realm of Meghan actually looks really bad. She looks bad in what she wears. They're like little teenage bullies. That's all this is, and it's an old woman. Some old woman doing this about a young woman. Maybe it's wish fulfillment. Maybe they kind of see themselves in the role of Kate and they're kind of reliving something. I don't know. You know, she also makes this comment about Kate's children. And she comments, "The children, I thought, were so well behaved and so well trained." What? The children are well trained? What's that about? What do you mean? Why would we want children to be well trained? Of course, we want children to be trained as mascots. Well trained. And also there's a sort of barbed jab there at Meghan's children, you know, implying that they're not well behaved or well trained. I wonder why that is. I wonder why they're being perceived. It starts young, doesn't it? I wonder why they're being perceived as badly behaved and not well trained. It's very interesting. So there's also this, you know, she commented about Harry. He loves her and that's fine, but keep it to yourself because there are a lot of people who don't. What? Does anyone actually think about what's coming out of this woman's mouth or people like her? What does that mean? What, he's not allowed to speak about how much he loves his wife because other people don't like her? Is that your logic? It doesn't make sense. Like, does nobody... I know they're all on the grift, right? I know they all want money. I know they want to be part of this because hating on Meghan it makes you a lot of money. But does no one in their morals, right? Does anyone ever, like, go to bed at night and think, actually, like, maybe we should stop harassing this couple? Like, does anyone ever think, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Maybe there's something wrong. Maybe I'm not fulfilled here. I'm not acting like a very nice human being. Keep it to yourself because a lot of people don't. So essentially what you mean is, you don't like the fact that they're in love, and so you don't want to know about it. And yet you spend all your time following what they do and commenting about it, right? Just don't watch it. Don't watch the documentary. Like, I understand people responding to the documentary because it is a documentary, but if your very argument is that, like, oh, keep it to yourself, I don't want to know about how much you love her, don't watch it. Like, don't watch it. These people think they're extensions of the royal family, and it's really sad. Like, they think they're part of it. And why? What's happening in their lives with their family that they have to feel this sort of relationship with the royal family? What is that about? She's also part of the weird... Well, I didn't even know this was a thing until, you know, I saw the documentary. I'd kind of heard about it, but it's really weird. So people genuinely thought that Meghan was faking her pregnancy. Right. And then I know, apparently people also thought, actually, she wasn't pregnant, she had a surrogate. Therefore, the baby isn't hers. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you think a surrogate is? Right, what do you think that means, first of all, scientifically? And also, let's think about that, right? So say even that had happened. Say there was a situation where Meghan and Harry had decided to adopt a child. What are you saying about that adopted child? Are you saying that's not really part of the family? That child isn't part of the family because they're adopted? Because that's not right, is it? Of course they are. But we've got this woman posting extraordinary pictures of pregnant Meghan. Basically, someone had tweeted about that the public are being lied to because the Sussexes are lying about her being pregnant, and don't we deserve the truth? This is not a journalist, right? This goes beyond... These people tell themselves they're journalists, but this goes beyond what is normal. This is, at this point, deluding yourself into justifying your own hatred of this young woman who you don't know. You're actually getting to the point where you're examining pictures of her stomach to see if she's lied about being pregnant, when it wouldn't really make any difference anyway. And last of all, I wanted to leave with... This is so telling, right? And it's disgusting. I did see this on Twitter. I didn't realise it was her. I didn't know who she was. I kind of recognise her face because, you know, you see a person sometimes and you're like, oh, it's that woman that, like, talks about Meghan all the time. It's her. Right, she makes a tweet, right? Look how white Meghan's skin colour looks. What does that mean? Put that in the context of her know your place. You know, respect your betters, be modest, tread carefully, be careful, people have more power than you. Why is this woman, on the 24th of November this year, saying, look how white Meghan's skin colour looks? What does that mean? What does that mean? Have her colleagues said to her, what does that mean? Why are you sitting there judging the tone of somebody's skin? What are you trying to imply? Because for all we know, what do we even know? Like, what she's going to come up with next? You know, Meghan's an alien. Meghan is in fact blue. And she's wearing extensive prosthetics, in fact. And that's the new conspiracy theory. What does that mean if that's not racist? Why is obsessing over the skin colour of a person, like, why is that a thing? Look how white her skin looks. What's the point? What's your point? And again, Harry's saying about how conversations were had about the skin tone of Archie. Why is that a conversation that was being had? And you know what people have said, you know, maybe it wasn't a bad thing, maybe it was done in good faith, maybe it was just discussing the issues that might come along with that. I don't know the ins and outs of that. But from what we know of this woman, she runs a hate campaign against Meghan. She says all these terrible things, and then she says that. You can't argue good faith for that. So, I mean, I'm going to say this woman's probably racist, if that's not already obvious. You know, it's really, really odd. What an odd thing to do at that age. What an odd thing to do. You know, you get to a certain point in life, you would imagine that you would be doing things that, I don't know, that were kind and good and that, you know, you enjoy and you're with your own family and, you know, or making friendships, and rather than doing that with your life. Very bizarre. But anyway, yeah. Let me know what you think. I don't usually make videos about this kind of thing, but I've really been stunned by the venom people have for Meghan here. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and I think these people need to be called out. I know I don't have the hugest channel, but I'm happy to call people out. I don't mind. You know, I've had a lot of abuse on here before in the past, and I just kind of think, well, I've got a bit of a platform, and at least someone says something, you know, because I do want to try and use what I've got here to try to point this out, and maybe to just get people to think and ask some more questions here. We're just accepting this as completely normal, and it's really not normal. And I think everyone involved should be really ashamed and be assessing their part in it. Anyway, love you loads, and I will see you really soon. Okay, love you. Bye.